Good morning, friends. Chapter 66, The Shark Massacre. When in the southern fishery a captured sperm whale after a long and weary toil is brought alongside late at night, it is not, as a general thing at least, customary to proceed at once to the business of cutting him in, for that business is an exceedingly laborious one. It is not very soon completed, and requires all hands to set about it. Therefore the common usage is to take in all sail, lash the helm a lee, and then send everyone below to his hammock till daylight, with the reservation that until that time anchor watches shall be kept, that is, 2 and 2 for an hour. Each couple, the crew in rotation, shall mount the deck to see that all goes well. But sometimes, especially upon the line in the Pacific, this plan will not answer at all, because such incalculable hosts of sharks gather round the moored carcass, that were he left so for 6 hours, say, on the stretch, little more than the skeleton would be visible by morning. In most other parts of the ocean, however, where these fish do not so largely abound, their wondrous voracity can be at times considerably diminished by vigorously stirring them up with sharp whaling spades, a procedure notwithstanding, which, in some instances, only seems to tickle them into still greater activity. But it is not thus in the present case with the Pequod sharks, though, to be sure, any man unaccustomed to such sights, to have looked over her side that night, would have almost thought the whole round sea was one huge cheese, and those sharks the maggots in it. Nevertheless, upon Stubb setting the anchor watch after his supper was concluded, and when accordingly Queequeg and a forecastle seaman came on deck, no small excitement was created among the sharks, for immediately suspending the cutting stages over the side, and lowering 3 lanterns, so that they cast long gleams of light over the turbid sea, these 2 mariners, darting their long whaling spades, kept up an incessant murdering of the sharks, by striking the keen and steel deep into their skulls, seemingly their only vital part. But in the foamy confusion of their mixed and struggling hosts, the marksmen could not always hit their marks, and this brought about new revelations of the incredible ferocity of the foe. They viciously snapped, not only at each other's disembowelments, but like flexible bows, bent round and bit their own, till their own entrails seemed swallowed over and over again by the same mouth, to be oppositely voided by the gaping wound. Nor was this all. It was unsafe to meddle with the corpses and ghosts of these creatures. A sort of generic or pantheistic vitality seemed to lurk in their very joints and bones. After what might be called the individual life had departed, killed and hoisted on deck for the sake of his skin, one of these sharks almost took poor Queequeg's hand off, and then he tried to shut down the dead lid of his murderous jaw. "Queequeg, no care for what God made him shark," said the savage, agonizingly lifting his hand up and down. "Better Fiji God or Nantucket God, but the God that made the shark must be one damn Injun." 67. Cutting in. It was a Saturday night, and such a Sabbath as followed. Ex officio professors of Sabbath breaking are all whalemen. The ivory Pequod was turning into what seemed a shamble, every sailor a butcher. You would have thought we were offering up 10,000 red oxen to the sea gods. In the first place, the enormous cutting tackles, among other ponderous things comprising a cluster of blocks generally painted green, and which no single man can possibly lift, this vast bunch of grapes was swaying up to the main top and firmly lashed to the lower masthead, the strongest point anywhere above a ship's deck, the end of the hawser-like rope winding through these intricacies, and then conducted to the windlass, and the huge lower block of the tackles was swung over the whale. To this block the great blubber hook, weighing some 100 pounds, was attached, and now suspended in stages over the side, Starbuck and Stubb. The mates, armed with their long spades, began cutting a hole in the body for the insertion of the hook just above the nearest of the 2 side fins. This done, a broad semicircular line is cut round the hole. The hook is inserted, and the main body of the crew, striking up a wild chorus, now commence heaving in one dense crowd to the windlass, when instantly the entire ship careens over on her side, every bolt in her starts like the nail-heads of an old house. In frosty weather she trembles, quivers, and nods her frighted mastheads to the sky. More and more she leans over to the whale, while every gasping heave of the windlass is answered by a helping heave from the billows, till at last a swift, startling snap is heard. With a great swash the ship rolls upward and backwards from the whale, and the triumphant tackle rises into sight, dragging it after it the disengaged semicircular end of the first strip of blubber. Now as the blubber envelopes the whale precisely as the rind does an orange, so it is stripped off from the body precisely as an orange is sometimes stripped by spiralizing it. for the strain constantly kept up by the windlass continually keeps the whale rolling over and over in the water, and as the blubber of one strip uniformly peels off along the line called the scarf, simultaneously cut by the spades of Starbuck in the stub, the mates, and just as fast as it is thus peeled off, and indeed by that very act itself, it is all the time being hoisted higher and higher aloft, till its upper end grazes the main top. The men at the windlass can cease heaving, and for a moment or two the prodigious blood-dripping mass sways to and fro as if let down from the sky. Oh, this is gross. And everyone present must take good heed to dodge it when it swings, else it may box his ears and pitch him headlong overboard. One of the attending harpooneers now advances with a long, keen weapon called a boarding sword, and watching his chance, he dexterously slices out a considerable hole in the lower part of the swaying mass. Into this hole the end of the second alternating great tackle is then hooked so as to retain a hold upon the blubber, in order to prepare for what follows. Whereupon this accomplished swordsman, warning all hands to stand off, once more makes a scientific dash at the mass, and with a few sidelong desperate lunging slices, severs it completely in twain, so that while the short lower part is still fast, the long upper strip, called the blanket piece, swings clear and is all ready for lowering. The heavers forward now resume their song, and while the one tackle is peeling and hoisting a second strip from the whale, the other is slowly slackened away, and down goes the first strip through the main hatchways right beneath into an unfurnished parlor called the blubber room. Into this twilight apartment sundry nimble hands keep coiling away the long blanket piece as if it were a great live mass of plaited serpents, and thus the work proceeds, the two tackles hoisting and lowering simultaneously, both whale and windlass heaving, the heavers singing, the blubber room gentlemen coiling, the mates scarfing, the ship straining, and all hands swearing occasionally by way of assuaging the general friction. Have a good day, friends.